It was a moment that seemed small at first, barely noticeable against the rush of the world around them. But for Brennan Ashford, a billionaire CEO of Ashford Global Industries, that moment would soon become a turning point in his life. Brennan had never believed in the goodness of people. He'd spent 37 years of his life building an empire worth billions, but it came at a cost. He trusted no one, especially those who had nothing. They were dangerous, his father had warned him. Desperate people, always hungry for more, would take and take, leaving you with nothing but regret. That morning, Brennan was rushing to a board meeting. He wore his finest Italian wool coat, his leather briefcase stuffed with multi-million-dollar contracts. He was untouchable, or so he thought. But as he hurried through Back Bay Station, he saw her. Before we continue, do well to subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell, and tell us in the comment section where you are watching from to support our growth. A woman, perhaps in her early 30s, sitting against the cold tile wall near the subway entrance. Her little girl, no older than 6, slept in her lap, wrapped in a coat too large for her tiny frame. A piece of cardboard rested beside them, scrawled with the words, "Single mother. Lost our home. Anything helps. God bless you." Brennan paused, his assistant nearly colliding with him. "Mr. Ashford, the board is waiting. We have exactly 9 minutes to." She stopped when she saw Brennan wasn't moving. "Wait here," he said, his voice distant. Against every logical instinct in his mind, Brennan walked toward the woman. He had seen countless homeless people in Boston, but something about her stopped him. She wasn't asking for sympathy, not performing her hardship. Her eyes held no rehearsed desperation, only exhaustion, the kind that came from months of surviving on the edge. When she looked up, her face was raw, worn by months of hardship. She wasn't looking for pity, and that hit Brennan harder than any business loss ever had. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling down before her, ignoring the discomfort of his expensive suit touching the filthy floor. "Sutton," she said softly, her voice rough from the cold. "And this is Indy. She just turned 6. Brennan stared at her. There was something in her voice, something in her eyes, intelligence, dignity, a life lost, but not broken. "How long have you been out here?" he asked, his words laced with an unexpected curiosity. 5 months, she replied. "We were staying with my sister until November. Then she lost her apartment too. 5 months. A 6-year-old child, sleeping on subway floors for 5 months. As thousands of people walked by every day, none of them stopped." Brennan's assistant cleared her throat impatiently, but he held up a hand, silencing her. "Give me one moment," he said, then turned back to Sutton. His father's voice echoed in his head. "The desperate will bleed you dry and smile while doing it. Trust no one." But now, in front of this woman, this mother who had clearly lost everything but still held on to what mattered most, Brennan felt something inside him crack. Was his father right all along? Or was there another truth he had been avoiding? Brennan reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Sutton must have thought he was going to give her a few bills. Maybe $20, $50 if he felt generous. Instead, Brennan pulled out a sleek black credit card, the kind of card that belonged to someone who had everything. Platinum edges, no spending limit, no restrictions. He held it out to her. "Take it," he said, his voice firm but unsure. "It's yours for 24 hours. Buy whatever you want. No limits. No questions." Sutton's eyes widened, confusion flickering in her gaze. "I don't understand." "I want to see something," Brennan said, his voice steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. "I want to see what someone with nothing does when given everything." Her hands trembled as she reached for the card, her fingers cold and shaking. She was afraid, unsure if it was a trap. "Why me?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his. "Because I want to believe there's still good in the world. And I want to see if someone like you, someone who's lost everything, can prove my father wrong," he answered, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. Sutton's grip tightened around the card, as if it were a lifeline. But she didn't know if she could trust him, or if she was just too afraid to let go. Brennan stood up, his knees aching from kneeling on the cold, hard floor. "I'll come back tomorrow. Same time, same place," he said. "We'll see what you've done with the card." As Brennan walked away, a voice inside him whispered, "What if she doesn't?" His father's voice warned him that Sutton would take everything and disappear. But there was another voice, quieter, more fragile, asking, "What if she does the impossible?" That night, Brennan couldn't sleep. He stared at the glittering skyline from his penthouse, his phone buzzing with notifications. But all he could think about was Sutton, and whether she would prove him right or wrong. Brennan's eyes flicked nervously toward his phone, which sat on the marble countertop beside him. It had been hours since he handed Sutton the card. Hours of agonizing anticipation. And yet, his phone remained silent. The weight of what he had done settled on his shoulders. There was a part of him, maybe the smarter, more calculated part, that felt ridiculous for offering her a credit card without any conditions, without protections. But another part of him, the part he didn't know still existed, was hoping to witness a miracle. What if she doesn't take the card? He thought, pacing the length of his penthouse. What if she's playing me? It was almost 3 a.m. when Brennan finally pulled his phone from his pocket, opening the banking app with shaky fingers. He needed to know what she was doing with the money. He told himself it was for peace of mind. But deep down, he feared he had made a colossal mistake. He refreshed the screen. The transaction history blinked to life, showing absolutely nothing. No activity. Why isn't she spending? Brennan wondered. Was she too scared to take a risk? Was she planning something larger? Was she going to buy everything in one grand spree? His mind raced with every possibility, but nothing prepared him for what would happen next. The next morning, Brennan was in his car before the sun had even fully risen. He couldn't wait any longer. His assistant's panic calls went unanswered. Nothing else mattered. He needed to find Sutton. His driver pulled into the familiar street near Back Bay Station, and Brennan felt the weight of uncertainty in the air. As he stepped out, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a transaction notification. $37.84 at CVS. Brennan's heart skipped. His finger hovered over the screen, eager to know what she had bought. He couldn't see the details, just the amount. $37? A minute later, another notification popped up, $52.19 at Target. Brennan's pulse quickened. Is she being responsible with the money? He scrolled down, only to find another transaction, $28.63 at Dunkin' Donuts. The numbers were adding up, and Brennan wasn't sure whether to be relieved or disappointed. She wasn't splurging, but it wasn't what he expected either. It was only when he saw a final transaction of $100 to the Women's Shelter Donation Fund that he felt something shift inside him. His breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him. Sutton wasn't out buying lavish items. She was buying what her daughter needed: clothes, food, the things that kept them alive. And she still found a way to help others, donating a portion of the card to the very people who had helped her. He felt a lump in his throat as the last transaction hit him like a punch. This wasn't what he expected. Brennan arrived at the station, his mind racing. He had no idea what to expect when he saw Sutton again. Was she going to hand the card back in shame? Would she ask for more? The uncertainty gnawed at him. But when he arrived at the spot where he had left her, everything had changed. Sutton sat there, but her posture was different. She wasn't curled up in the same defeated way she had been the day before. Her shoulders were straighter, and her expression was something else. She was standing, her daughter, Indy, awake now and sitting beside her. Indy wore a new winter coat, a purple one with a fur-lined hood, her hair neatly combed and pulled back with a butterfly clip. Brennan's heart sank. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready for what he was about to witness. The little girl looked at him, clutching a stuffed elephant and coloring in a fresh coloring book, the smell of new crayons wafting through the air. She smiled shyly at him, but it was a smile full of innocence, full of hope. Sutton stood up as he approached, the credit card already in her hand. There was panic in her eyes, but also something else, something more complex. I was going to return it, she stammered, her voice shaky. I swear I was. I just needed to get a few things first. Basic things. Necessary things. Brennan shook his head gently, raising his hands in reassurance. Keep it, he said. You still have hours left. Sutton's shoulders slumped with relief, but confusion still lingered. She couldn't understand why this man, this stranger, was being so generous. She had every reason to believe this was some cruel test, but he wasn't backing down. I don't understand you, she said quietly. Brennan smiled softly, glancing at Indy, who was happily playing with her new toy. That makes two of us, he replied. But I think I'm starting to understand why I did this. Sutton's eyes followed his gaze toward Indy, and Brennan saw the unspoken love in her eyes. The kind of love that moved mountains. The kind of love that made everything else seem small. You bought her a coat, Brennan said softly. She was freezing, Sutton replied, almost matter-of-factly, as though it was the only thing that made sense in the world. Brennan felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't expected this deep, selfless act of love that made him feel small in comparison. She could have spent the money however she wanted, on herself, on luxury. But she had chosen to protect her daughter, to give her warmth and comfort. Sutton handed him the receipts with shaking hands, like she was presenting evidence of something she wasn't sure was acceptable. Brennan scanned them quickly, and it became clear there was nothing self-indulgent about her purchases. Everything was for Indy. A new coat, boots, medicine, basic necessities. But it wasn't just that. At the bottom of the list was something that nearly brought him to his knees. A $100 donation to the shelter on Mass Avenue. "You donated money?" he asked, his voice tight. Sutton nodded, her voice trembling. "They've helped us when they could. They're always full, always running out of supplies. I thought, if I had extra, even just for one day, maybe I could help them help someone else." Brennan stared at the receipts, his thoughts swirling. Sutton, who had nothing, had given everything. Not for herself, not for luxury, just for survival, and for others. His father's voice, the voice that had shaped him, was silent now, crushed under the weight of Sutton's actions. "Why didn't you buy anything for yourself?" Brennan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Indy comes first," Sutton replied, her voice steady, but full of emotion. "She always comes first. I can manage, but she deserves better." Brennan looked at Indy, coloring peacefully in her seat, completely unaware of the emotional storm swirling around her. For the first time in his life, Brennan Ashford felt genuinely small, not in wealth, not in power, but in humanity. Brennan Ashford stood there, caught between a world of wealth and power that he had known for 37 years, and a reality so foreign to him that it felt almost unreal. He had walked away from Sutton yesterday, still unsure whether what he had done was an act of kindness or just another twisted test. But now, as he stood before her, watching her cling to her daughter with a fierceness that left him breathless, something inside him had shifted. This wasn't about money. This wasn't about testing his father's old beliefs. This was about seeing the world differently, about seeing the goodness that still existed where he least expected it. Sutton stood there, clutching the receipts in her trembling hands, not sure whether to be grateful or fearful of what came next. She had spent the money carefully, thoughtfully, but never extravagantly. Every penny had been spent on Indy's needs. And the $100 donation to the shelter? That was a final blow to the walls Brennan had built around his heart for years. Sutton had taken a risk with that donation, her last act of hope in a world that had shown her no mercy. And Brennan? He was standing in awe of her dignity, of the way she was fighting not just to survive, but to give back even when she had nothing. "Why didn't you buy anything for yourself?" he asked again, needing to understand, needing to feel like he wasn't the one missing something. "Indy comes first," Sutton said simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "She always comes first. I can manage. I've managed this long. But she deserves better." Brennan's eyes lingered on Indy, her small hands clutching a stuffed elephant, coloring in her little book like nothing in the world could touch her. She was so innocent, so pure. The weight of her childhood, of what she had seen and experienced, hung heavy in the air. And yet, she was still smiling, still believing. "I think it's time you stopped managing," Brennan said softly. His voice was quiet, but the words carried the weight of everything he was trying to change. Sutton looked up at him, her eyes full of skepticism and exhaustion. "What do you mean?" "I want you and Indy to come with me. To start over. To get a real chance." Brennan's words came out before he could stop them, but there was no backing down now. He couldn't undo this. Not after seeing what he had seen. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Brennan took a deep breath. "I want to help you both. I can give you a foundation. A fresh start. No strings attached. No expectations. Just trust." Sutton stood frozen, her hand still holding the credit card, and her face a mixture of disbelief and something more vulnerable, a hope she had buried long ago. Could she really trust this stranger who had changed her life with a single, impulsive gesture? Could she believe in something that felt too good to be true? Brennan stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Let me help. Let me prove that there's more to life than wealth. That some things, like kindness, can't be bought." For a moment, everything hung in the air, an invitation, a challenge, a lifeline. Then, Sutton looked at Indy, her daughter now running around the suite with wide eyes, marveling at everything in her new world. Sutton closed her eyes for a moment, letting the possibility of something better seep in. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "The story is taking unexpected turns. If you're hooked, don't forget to subscribe to get the next chapter." This is just the beginning of their journey. The next few days were full of activity, a whirlwind of new beginnings and new possibilities that felt almost surreal to Sutton. Brennan had kept his word, not just offering his help, but proving it in ways she never imagined possible. When he had said there were no strings attached, no expectations, Sutton had been skeptical, terrified even. It felt like a trick, like there was something lurking beneath the surface. But as the days passed, she began to see something different. She and Indy were no longer sleeping on subway floors or wandering between shelters. Instead, they were in a cozy two-bedroom apartment, just a few blocks from the city's bustling streets. The apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was real. It had walls that didn't shake with every passing train, a door that locked securely, and, most importantly, it had a warmth that came not from the heating system, but from the security of knowing that they were safe, truly safe, for the first time in months. Sutton couldn't believe it. How had she gone from living in constant fear to this peaceful, steady life? How had Brennan, this cold, distant billionaire, become the man who had given them everything without asking for anything in return? The first night they spent in the apartment, Sutton could hardly sleep. She sat in the quiet living room, watching Indy, who had fallen asleep on the couch with a content smile on her face. Sutton ran a hand over her hair, her fingers trembling slightly. This was real. This wasn't a dream. Brennan had made it happen. He had given them a chance she hadn't even dared to hope for. A future, a chance to rebuild. The next morning, Brennan returned, as promised, with coffee and pastries in hand. He walked into the apartment, his eyes scanning the space, taking in the simple but undeniable signs of change. Sutton and Indy were sitting at the table, quietly eating breakfast. The air between them had shifted. Sutton was no longer the guarded, anxious woman he had met on the subway floor. She was different now, stronger, more at ease, though still cautious. "Morning," Brennan said, handing Sutton a cup of coffee. "How's everything this morning?" Sutton took the cup, inhaling the steam like it was something she had forgotten existed. "It's surreal," she admitted. "I keep waiting to wake up back at the subway station. I keep thinking this is all some kind of elaborate dream I had while freezing on concrete." Brennan smiled gently, sitting down at the table with them. "It's real, and it's yours. No one can take it away from you." Sutton looked down at Indy, who was happily coloring a picture at the table. The sight of her daughter, her hair combed, a new set of clothes on her, and a fresh smile on her face, was enough to bring tears to Sutton's eyes. "She deserves this," Sutton said quietly. "She deserves to be a kid, to be happy." Brennan nodded, his eyes softening. "She deserves everything good. You both do." They sat together in silence for a moment, the weight of their unspoken understanding settling over them. But Sutton's thoughts were interrupted when Brennan spoke again, his tone serious. "I've made some calls," he said. "I've arranged for you to have a real chance to start over. You and Indy. I've connected with a few job training programs, ones that match your skills. Healthcare coverage, childcare, everything you need to get back on your feet. And, most importantly, a place to start." Sutton blinked, stunned. This wasn't charity. It wasn't a handout. Brennan was offering them a path forward, one that didn't depend on him, but on their own ability to succeed. I can't even begin to thank you enough," Sutton whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't think I'd ever have a chance like this." Brennan leaned back in his chair, his eyes thoughtful. "You don't need to thank me. I just want to see you succeed. And I believe you will." But as the days passed and Sutton began to embrace the stability that Brennan had given her, doubts began to creep in. Was she really worthy of this chance? Was she really meant to leave the past behind and step into a future that seemed too good to be true? One evening, as she stood in her small, modest kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, the phone rang. It was a call from an unknown number, and when she answered, her heart skipped a beat. "Sutton," the voice on the other end said. "It's your sister. I need you to come back. We need to talk. What's going to happen next? Will Sutton's past come back to haunt her? Find out in the next chapter. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to this channel to support our growth. Tell us what you think about this story in the comment section. Sutton's hand trembled as she held the phone to her ear. The voice on the other end was familiar, but it carried a weight she hadn't expected to feel. Her sister, Kelly, hadn't been a part of Sutton's life for months. Their last encounter had been harsh, an argument that had left deep scars, especially for Sutton, who had been clinging to whatever shreds of stability she could find in the aftermath of losing her home. "Kelly," Sutton said, her voice wary. "Why are you calling me now? I, I don't know how to say this, but I need you to come back. We need to talk. You're not the only one struggling. I messed up, Sutton. Please, I need your help." Sutton closed her eyes, her mind swirling. Her sister's voice had always carried a note of manipulation, especially when things got tough. Kelly had never been one to accept responsibility for her mistakes. She'd always turned to Sutton, expecting her to fix everything. But this time, Sutton had nothing left to give. She had fought for months just to stay alive, just to give Indy a future. And now, her past was calling her back, begging for help. "I'm not the same person I was, Kelly," Sutton said, her voice firm. "I can't go back. I can't do it. Not for you. Not for anyone." There was a long pause on the other end, and then Kelly's voice cracked. "Please. We're family, Sutton. You can't just walk away from me." Sutton's heart ached. But she had made her choice. She had already walked away from a life of desperation. She wasn't going back. "I'll think about it," Sutton said, though her words didn't carry the conviction they once would have. She hung up before her sister could say anything more, the weight of the conversation lingering in the air. The next morning, as Sutton sat at the table with Indy, the decision she had been avoiding loomed large. Kelly had called. Her sister was still a part of her life, despite everything. She had been a toxic presence for too long, but a part of Sutton still felt the pull to protect her family. Brennan arrived later that morning, as usual, with his calm presence that seemed to make everything feel more manageable. He handed Sutton a cup of coffee, and for a moment, she just breathed in the warmth. "You look troubled," he said, his gaze soft, knowing that something had shifted in her. "What happened?" Sutton hesitated, biting her lip as she considered how to explain. "My sister called me," she said quietly. "She wants me to come back. She says she needs my help." Brennan didn't say anything immediately. He simply sat down across from her, studying her face with that intensity that always made Sutton feel like he could see right through her. "What do you want to do?" Sutton looked down at her hands, clenched tightly around her coffee cup. She knew what Brennan was asking, and it wasn't just about her sister. It was about everything, about her choices, her future, her path forward. "I don't know," she admitted. "Part of me wants to go. Part of me wants to help. But another part of me, I don't know if I can go back to that life. I've come so far, Brennan. I've fought so hard to get here." Brennan reached across the table, his hand hovering just above hers. "You don't have to go back. You've made it this far without her. And you don't owe anyone anything, Sutton. Not your sister, not anyone." His words hit Sutton harder than she expected. She had spent so much of her life trying to fix things for others, trying to prove that she was worth something. But Brennan's quiet confidence in her, his belief in her ability to stand on her own, made her realize something. She didn't need to go back to that life of uncertainty and hurt. She could move forward. She could build a future, not just for Indy, but for herself as well. But as the morning passed and Brennan left to handle his business, Sutton found herself standing at the door, staring out at the world beyond. She had made her choice, but Kelly's words echoed in her mind. What if she had made the wrong decision? What if her sister was in real trouble? Just as Sutton turned away, the doorbell rang. She hesitated, wondering who it could be. As she opened the door, her heart skipped a beat. Standing on the other side was Kelly, looking different somehow. Tired, yes, but also humbled. She didn't say anything right away. She just stood there, a faint tear streaking down her cheek. "I messed up," Kelly whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, Sutton, help me." Sutton's past is knocking on her door. Will she go back to help? Or will she keep moving forward? Find out what happens next, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this gripping story. Sutton stood frozen at the door, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked at her sister, Kelly. The years of anger, hurt, and betrayal hung heavy between them. But now, standing face to face, there was something new, something raw and vulnerable in Kelly's eyes. Sutton had seen her at her lowest before, but this was different. This time, Kelly wasn't demanding help. She wasn't manipulating Sutton into fixing her life. She was broken, and for the first time, Sutton saw it. Kelly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, trying to hide the tears that had already fallen. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I messed up. I don't know where else to turn. I don't have anyone but you." Sutton felt the weight of Kelly's words settle into her bones. Part of her wanted to close the door, to turn away and walk back to the life she had started to rebuild. She had worked so hard for this, so hard to leave the past behind. But another part of her, the part that had spent her life putting others first, the part that loved her sister despite everything, was tempted to let her in. But she couldn't go back. Not now. Not when she had finally found a sense of stability, when she could finally breathe without worrying about whether the next day would be worse than the one before. Sutton had promised herself she would stop sacrificing her own well-being for others. She had to put Indy first. She had to protect the life they had just begun to build. "I can't help you, Kelly," Sutton said, her voice firm but soft. "I've already done everything I can. I've fought for so long, and now I finally have something to hold on to. I can't risk losing it." Kelly's eyes flickered with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "So that's it. You're just going to walk away from me?" Sutton shook her head. "I'm not walking away from you, Kelly. I'm walking away from that life. The one that kept dragging me down, the one that kept taking everything from me. I'm done being your safety net." Kelly's face twisted in frustration, but there was no anger in her voice. Just desperation. "You think I want to live like this? You think I want to keep making mistakes? I've been to hell and back, Sutton. I don't know what else to do." Sutton closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had spent her entire life carrying the weight of others' mistakes, trying to fix things that were never hers to fix. She couldn't do it anymore. She had to let go. "Maybe you're right," Sutton said quietly, her heart breaking in two. "Maybe you've been through hell. But I can't go back there. Not for you. Not for anyone." Kelly stood there for a long moment, her face a mix of emotions, hurt, confusion, and a raw, unspoken sadness. She didn't argue, didn't beg. She just turned, slowly, and walked away. Sutton stood at the door, her hand still on the handle, her heart heavy. She had made the right choice. She had to believe that. Later that evening, Sutton sat with Indy, watching her daughter play with her new stuffed elephant. The apartment felt more like home than it ever had before. Sutton had made peace with her decision, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. But then, as she was tucking Indy into bed, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Brennan. Sutton's heart skipped as she opened it, her fingers trembling as she read the text. "We need to talk. Something big is coming." Will Sutton's past come back to haunt her? Find out what happens next, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this intense, emotional journey. She couldn't help but wonder, what more could Brennan possibly offer? He had already given them everything. A home, stability, hope, a future. Sutton took a deep breath and typed out a quick response. "I'm free now. Let me know when you're here." Within minutes, Brennan texted back. "I'll be there in 10. Sutton's pulse quickened. She sat on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Indy was still playing in the other room, blissfully unaware of the whirlwind that had been her mother's life only a few weeks ago. When Brennan arrived, he looked almost the same as he always did, immaculate, poised, the embodiment of wealth and power. But there was something different about him today. His face held a look of quiet intensity, a solemnity that told Sutton this conversation was important. Kelly's eyes flickered with a mix of hurt and disbelief. "So that's it. You're just going to walk away from me?" Sutton shook her head. "I'm not walking away from you, Kelly. I'm walking away from that life. The one that kept dragging me down, the one that kept taking everything from me. I'm done being your safety net." Kelly's face twisted in frustration, but there was no anger in her voice. Just desperation. "You think I want to live like this? You think I want to keep making mistakes? I've been to hell and back, Sutton. I don't know what else to do." Sutton closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had spent her entire life carrying the weight of others' mistakes, trying to fix things that were never hers to fix. She couldn't do it anymore. She had to let go. "Maybe you're right," Sutton said quietly, her heart breaking in two. "Maybe you've been through hell. But I can't go back there. Not for you. Not for anyone." Kelly stood there for a long moment, her face a mix of emotions, hurt, confusion, and a raw, unspoken sadness. She didn't argue, didn't beg. She just turned, slowly, and walked away. Sutton stood at the door, her hand still on the handle, her heart heavy. She had made the right choice. She had to believe that. Later that evening, Sutton sat with Indy, watching her daughter play with her new stuffed elephant. The apartment felt more like home than it ever had before. Sutton had made peace with her decision, and for the first time in years, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. But then, as she was tucking Indy into bed, her phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from Brennan. Sutton's heart skipped as she opened it, her fingers trembling as she read the text. "We need to talk. Something big is coming." Will Sutton's past come back to haunt her? Find out what happens next, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this intense, emotional journey. She couldn't help but wonder, what more could Brennan possibly offer? He had already given them everything. A home, stability, hope, a future. Sutton took a deep breath and typed out a quick response. "I'm free now. Let me know when you're here." Within minutes, Brennan texted back. "I'll be there in 10. Sutton's pulse quickened. She sat on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Indy was still playing in the other room, blissfully unaware of the whirlwind that had been her mother's life only a few weeks ago. When Brennan arrived, he looked almost the same as he always did, immaculate, poised, the embodiment of wealth and power. But there was something different about him today. His face held a look of quiet intensity, a solemnity that told Sutton this conversation was important. "Hey," he said softly as he walked in, his eyes briefly flicking toward Indy, who was happily coloring at the table. "Hey," Sutton replied, her voice steady, but her mind was racing. She couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment where everything was about to change. "Sit down," Brennan said, gesturing toward the couch. He sat opposite her, his posture open but serious. "I've been thinking about you and Indy a lot. About everything that's happened. I want to be clear, this isn't just about charity. It's about the future." Sutton swallowed. "I don't need anything from you anymore," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm grateful for everything you've done, Brennan. More than I can put into words. But I don't want to owe anyone anything. I don't want you to think I'm taking advantage of you." Brennan shook his head slowly, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of understanding and something else, a tenderness that had been slowly forming between them. "Sutton, it's not about that," he said softly. "You've done more than you'll ever realize by just being who you are. I'm not helping you because I expect anything in return. I'm helping because I believe in what you're capable of. I've seen it. You're stronger than I ever gave people like you credit for. And that's why I'm asking, what happens next?" Sutton looked down at her hands, the weight of his words sinking in. What happened next? She had been asking herself that question for days now. Could she really leave her old life behind? Could she keep walking forward without looking back? "Indy and I have a future now," Sutton said, her voice quieter, more reflective. "But there's still so much I need to do. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself for what I let happen, for how long I stayed stuck." Brennan leaned forward slightly, his voice warm. "You've made it this far, Sutton. You're already on your way. The only thing that's left now is to believe in yourself. To believe that you deserve all of this. You've given so much, and now it's your turn to accept the life you've earned." Sutton felt the tears threaten to spill from her eyes, but she held them back. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just surviving. She was living. She wasn't the same woman who had begged on subway floors. She wasn't the same woman who had accepted that her life was just about getting by. No, Sutton was stronger than that now. She was capable of anything. As Brennan's words sank in, Sutton realized that the life she had once been afraid to claim was now within her reach. She could have everything: stability, peace, even love. But most importantly, she could have herself back. The part of her that had been buried beneath the years of hardship. The part of her that had always believed that no one, not even her, deserved a second chance, was waking up. And just as she thought she might finally be able to close the door on the past, a small, soft voice echoed from the next room. It was Indy, holding her new stuffed elephant in one hand and the biggest smile on her face. "Mama, look, I can draw a butterfly just like you said." Sutton walked over to her daughter, her heart swelling with love. She knelt down beside her and kissed her forehead. "It's beautiful, baby," she whispered. "You're going to be amazing." Brennan watched them quietly, a soft smile tugging at the corner of his lips. It wasn't just about the wealth or the generosity that had connected them. It was about something deeper. It was about seeing the good in a world that had often seemed cold and finding the courage to move forward despite the weight of the past. Sutton looked at Brennan one last time, her heart full of gratitude and something new, hope. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly, finally ready to embrace everything the future had to offer. This story is a reminder that true strength is not measured by wealth or status, but by the ability to rise after every fall. We are all capable of overcoming our struggles, no matter how heavy they may seem. Sutton's journey teaches us the power of self-belief, the importance of giving and receiving help, and the incredible impact that kindness can have on someone's life. The key takeaway here is simple. You are worthy of every good thing that comes your way, and you have the strength to create the future you deserve. Never let your past define your future. You have the power to rewrite your story. No matter how tough things get, never give up. The best part of your story is yet to be written. Keep going, even when it feels impossible, because change is always just around the corner. You're stronger than you think, and the world is waiting to see what you'll do next. If this story inspired you, make sure to subscribe to my channel to continue following amazing journeys like this one. Don't miss out on more stories of hope, resilience, and transformation. Your support helps grow this community, and together, we can keep sharing these powerful stories.